Good morning. Welcome to Primetime at BU Library. Celebrating learning beyond the classroom through the experiences and accomplishments of Bethel faculty, students, and staff is what Primetime is all about. It's a collaborative project between the Friends of the Bethel University Library and many other offices on campus. You can find upcoming Primetime events on the library's website news and events calendar. If you missed a presentation, most are recorded and can be viewed online in the BU Digital Library, also found on the library website. On Tuesday, April 22nd, students from the Spring Sankofa Tour will share their experiences from a week traveling together through the sites of the American struggle for civil rights, justice, and the beloved community. We are so happy to have you join us for our celebration of poetry. We have many good reasons to celebrate. This happens to be National Library Week, and we like to do something special to commemorate that. April is also National Poetry Month, and next week is Shakespeare's 450th birthday, the occasion for which the English department devised the sonnet contest that we're going to hear about today. We have many good things ahead for you, the winning sonnets, a number of poems, music, and even a little comic relief. Sit back and enjoy the festivities. First up, we have Thomas Becknell, who will announce the sonnet winners.
Good morning, thanks for coming out, and a special thank you to Rhonda, to Scott Kaihai, David, and all the other librarians that made this partnership with the English Department possible. We decided to have a Shakespeare sonnet contest here to celebrate not only Poetry Month, but the 450th birthday of a great writer of sonnets, Shakespeare. Shakespeare was not the only one to write sonnets, of course, but he developed a unique kind of a sonnet that is a wonderful challenge. A sonnet, 14 lines, and iambic pentameter. It has a kind of a feel to it. The iamb, the heartbeat, and the 5 pulse breath of the line, the pentameter. And so sonnets are fun. They're a fun challenge, and we decided to have a contest. So I'm going to try to limit my comments here. We had a panel of judges who read the sonnets. There were 14 submissions, so we got some really good representation of sonnets that came in from students. And the panel read them anonymously and developed 3 categories. We're going to offer three prizes. These are prizes. I think if you open up the old book, you'll find that there's a possibility for a bigger book inside. So we developed 3 categories. One, of course, the most Shakespearean sonnet. Another one, the sonnet with the coolest couplet. And the third category, the sonnet that was most relatable to everyday life. So I'm going to begin with the first one, but it needs a bit of a preface. And those who have won the awards don't yet know, and I don't even know if they're here. So we'll announce them, and if the writer of the sonnet is here, I would like the writer to come up and read. If not, then I will read it. But the first one, the most Shakespearean, is a sonnet that responds directly to a sonnet that Shakespeare wrote, Sonnet 130, which is a fun sonnet. Dr. Bruce, who's our Shakespeare professor, I asked him if he would read. So I have a hard copy and you have it on your pad, so you take your pen. Okay.
That's easier. All right. Sonnet 130. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked, red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes there is more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare.
So I'd like to announce that the winner of that sonnet, the most Shakespearean sonnet, is Kaylin Creason. Is Kaylin here? Kaylin is not here. All right, well, I'll read Kaylin's sonnet. No, Mark, why don't you come up and read it? He's not seen it before.
This might not quite be as polished. Okay. A woman scorned, response from the mistress of Sonnet 130. My master's words have stolen my bright heart. My beauty they have also recognized. His poetry is that of skillful art, discovering where my imperfection hides. A song of praise my ears seem to have heard. I wonder if that is my true love's aim, marked reverence found in every word, but with each one, my physique he does maim. He speaks of me in such a mocking tone, and yet he claims his love for me is great. No kinder lover have I ever known, so who am I to turn my love to hate? But if my master cease thus to complain, my lips he shall not ever feel again.
Second category is the sonnet with the coolest couplet. That award goes unanimously to Jared Nelson, Ode to Orange Juice. Jared, are you here? Jared, come on up and read your sonnet.
This is Ode to Orange Juice. Rising, I longed to be kissed by the sun. As I slept, my dreams were of something sweet. Lacking this joy, my day is as good as done. My soul cries out to be quenched by a treat. It is my nature, a divine design. Refreshment is as close as just one pour. My body yearns for this liquid sunshine. High in vitamin C, it heals life's sore. No matter a quaint sip or massive gulp, engrossed by the beauty of this blossom, concentrate or fresh squeezed, low or high pulp, results in ambrosia, truly awesome. I gaze at this orange juice high in my glass. Hey you, Pop-Tart boy, I soon will surpass.
And the final award, I think the writer may not be present. The most relatable sonnet was written by Kelly Van Wyck. I think she is not here today, so I'll read it. The meaning of time. Time runs fast. Can anyone outrun time? Seconds melt minutes, dissolve long hours. An overplayed record am I, past prime, absent youth, and its insecure power. Rosy skin pales to birch bark. Robust bones ache, shrunken, shriveled, a mere shell of myself. Joints crack, an iced pond. Each motion I make, been robbed of the gemstones of beauty's wealth. My mind's not as sharp as it used to be. Memory draws well water from the deep. Wit is a door to which I've lost the key. Yet I am anchored by the hope I keep. Though outwardly I am wasting away, inwardly I am renewed day by day. Thank you. Dan Sandberg is going to present a song, The Roadside Fire. from the set Songs of Travel. Music by Ray Vaughan Williams.
Just so everyone knows, the text is by Robert Louis Stevenson. I will make you brooches and toys for your delight, of bird song at morning and starshine at night. I will make a palace fit for you and me, of green days in forest and blue days at sea. I shall keep my kitchen and you shall keep your room, where white flows the river and bright blows the broom, and you shall wash your linens and keep your body white, in rainfall at morning and dewfall at night. And this shall be for music when no one else is near, the fine song for singing, a rare song to hear, that only I remember, that only you admire, of the broad road that stretches, and the roadside fire. And next we will have a reading by Barrett Fisher.
I'm glad we started where we did with the dialogue between Shakespeare and a newer poet, because that's the tack that I chose to take as well. I'm going to read a poem by Billy Collins, past poet laureate of the United States, and it's a poem that is in dialogue with a much older poem by a rather obscure poet by the name of William Wordsworth. I'm not going to take the time to read the poem that Collins is in dialogue with, but I want to say a couple of words about it because I don't assume everybody here is familiar with the poem. The poem is by Wordsworth is called Tintern Abbey, and it's known by that title, but what probably only English majors and English teachers know is that the full title of the poem is Lines Written a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey on Revisiting the Banks of the Wye during a tour July 13th, 1798, which is a poem in itself. Now, Wordsworth's poem is both an act of recollection, as he looks back and recalls an earlier visit to the spot by the Wye River, and it's also, in a sense, a projection, as he describes the future emotional and spiritual benefits of that moment. And Wordsworth thinks about these experiences of his past self, especially the time he spent communing with nature, as the foundation for his present character. But at the same time, he also describes some disappointment and nostalgia, how he feels in looking back. And those are the lines, I think, which are important to keep in mind as I read Collins's poem, especially where Wordsworth says, "That time is past, and all its aching joys are now no more, and all its dizzy raptures." So this is Billy Collins, lines composed over 3,000 miles from Tintern Abbey. I was here before, a long time ago, and now I am here again, is an observation that occurs in poetry as frequently as rain occurs in life. The fellow may be gazing over an English landscape, hillsides dotted with sheep, a row of tall trees topping the downs, or he could be moping through the shadows of a dark Bavarian forest, a wedge of cheese and a volume of fairy tales tucked into his rucksack. But the feeling is always the same. It was better the first time. This time is not nearly as good. I'm not feeling as chipper as I did back then. Something is always missing. Swans, a glint on the surface of a lake, some minor but essential touch. Or the quality of things has diminished. The sky was a deeper, more dimensional blue. Clouds were more cathedral-like, and water rushed over rock with greater effervescence. From our chairs, we have watched the poor author in his waistcoat as he recalls the dizzying icebergs of childhood and mills around in a field of weeds. We have heard the poets long dead declaim their dying from a promontory, a riverbank, next to a haycock, within a copse. We have listened to their dismay, the kind that issues from poems the way water issues forth from hoses, the way the match always gives its little speech on fire. And when we put down the book at last, lean back, close our eyes, stinging with print, and slip in the bookmark of sleep, we will be schooled enough to know that when we wake up a little before dinner, things will not be nearly as good as they once were. Something will be missing from this long coffin-shaped room, the walls and windows now only 2 different shades of gray, the glossy gardenia drooping in its chipped terracotta pot, and on the floor, shoes, socks, the browning core of an apple. Nothing will be as it was a few hours ago, back in the glorious past before our naps, back in that golden age that grew to a close sometime shortly after lunch. And now April Schmidt will read the poem.
Well, what I'm going to read, after I account for my shortness, what I'm going to read is going to continue the passing of the baton from one poet to another. One of my beloved teachers from grad school was local poet Deborah Keenan. And she used to say these brilliant, profound, amazing things like, you need to go into the world and, you know, shimmer, and they would be more beautiful than that. And then she would look at us and she would say, that's kind of an assignment. And like she meant it. Like, you need to produce something from that and hand it back to me. And a lot of her students ended up being profoundly impacted by that. And one of the local publishing houses, Broadcraft Press, asked her actually to put together a book of these kind of assignments. And it's titled From Tiger to Prayer. And so this poem, which comes from a younger and significantly less accomplished poet, is one of those, the result of one of those assignments. If you want to look at it, there are a few papers around on the floor of the chairs. They're shaped like this. I like to see and hear poetry, so this isn't me trying to advertise myself. It's just letting you have the full experience, right? So, From Tiger to Prayer. After Deborah Keenan, for Gwyneth, who is my 3-year-old daughter. What are the poems I have to write? Not a damn one. What never lies? Need. What do you think you want? Death. Lucky ducky, my little oracle says. For her soup case, lipped cream latte, I lucky ducky. What is the distance between politic and pleasure? A measure of more than one me. Me's? A meter sprung of the present. A prize! In Beethoven, she hears violin, flute, drum, bus. In winter sky, she sees moon, wrap up, folded. In weeping, she feels wash eyes, washed eyes. In the morning, she slides her arms cheerfully through the straps. Her day's provisions stretch open her chest, trouble her knees. My pack, she says. My pack. It is my job to dismantle her song, to hinge her language to the doorframe of society, with suit and whipped and please and sir and half and back. I want to fail. Oracle, blessing, daughter. I want to fail hard enough that your every night ends with, Tiger, come, God, here. Next, we'll have a song from Shatera Graham.
Hello. Today I will be singing When I Bring to You Colored Toys by Rabindranath Tagore.
And why there is such a play of colors on clouds, and water, and why flowers are painted in tints, while I gave colored toys to you, my child. When I sing to make you dance, I truly know there is music in leaves, and waves and the chorus to the heart of the listening earth. When I sing to make you dance, when I bring sweet things to your greedy hands, I know there is honey in the cup of the flower, and my fruits are secretly filled with sweet juice. When I bring sweet things to your greedy hands. Up next. Up next, we will hear reading from Dan Nimlos.
I'd like to read two sonnets from Gerard Manley Hopkins. The first one is, it seems like it's almost out of the Psalms. You know, Manley Hopkins, he didn't have a very happy life, and he didn't have a very long life. He wrote this one when he was in Ireland teaching English to the students there, and the thing about this scenario is that Manley Hopkins hated Ireland, and he hated teaching English. He wanted to just do poetry all the time. He didn't want to have to do this. But he was a Jesuit priest, and this is feels like a prayer coming from him. And I think that this is very, very relatable. That I think we can all find common ground in some of the sentiments he expresses here. This one is called "Thou art indeed just, Lord." Justus quidem tu est, Domine, si disputum tecum, virum tamen justa luquar ad te, quare via impiorum prosperatur? Thou art indeed just, Lord, if I contend with thee. But, sir, so what I plead is just. Why do sinners' ways prosper? And why must disappointment all I endeavor end? Wert thou my enemy, O thou my friend, how wouldst thou worse, I wonder, than thou dost defeat and thwart me? Oh, the sots and thralls of lust do in spare hours more thrive than I that spend, sir, life upon thy cause. See, banks and brakes, now leave it how thick, laced they are again with fretty chervil. Look, and fresh wind shakes them. Birds build, but not I build, no, but strain. Time's eunuch, and not breed one work that wakes. Mine, O thou Lord of life, send my roots rain. The second poem is called God's Grandeur. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. It gathers to a greatness like the ooze of oil crushed. Why do men then not now wreck his rod? Generations have trod, have trod, have trod. And all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil, and wears man's smudge and shares man's smell. The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel being shod. And for all this, nature is never spent. There lives the dearest freshness deep down things, And though the last lights off the black west went, O morning at the brown brink eastward springs, because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods with warm breast and with, bright wings. Thanks. Next we'll have a reading from Jim Hurd.
What a good thing to do together. Really, really, really neat. My experience with Emily Dickinson is I read the first half of one of her poems, says, wow, and then I read the second half, I say, what? I said to my friend John Lawyer, you know, what's this thing that she has about death and suffering? And he's explained, well, you know, she was living during the Civil War period, and that explains a lot. So this poem, short poem, is about how ecstasy in battle turns. My triumph lasted till the drums. My triumph lasted till the drums had left the dead alone. And then I dropped my victory and chastened, stole along to where the finished face's conclusion turned on me. And then I hated glory and wished myself were they. Our next reader is David Stewart, reading from, quote, an obscure Scottish poet, unquote.
Thank you so much, Jim, for that warm introduction. Two things you need to know about my poet whose name is William Topaz McGonigal. He died in 1902. The first thing you need to know is that he's widely regarded as the worst poet who ever wrote at any time in any language. And the second thing you need to know about him is that whatever his gift was, he was absolutely tenacious in exercising the gift and never let up until the end of his life. How else can you explain a poet whose work was published under the title of, first of all, Poetic Gems, and then second, More Poetic Gems, followed by still more poetic gems, followed by yet more poetic gems, followed by further poetic gems, and then yet further poetic gems. And I believe his last collection was called Last Poetic Gems. And I'm fortunate to have in my possession a critical edition of his works, which I'd be happy to lend to you. One thing about the poem, I didn't know this, but Queen Victoria escaped assassination attempts 8 times. And she said that it actually brought her closer to her subjects. Interesting strategy. But in 1882, a Scotsman named Roderick McMillen tried to shoot Queen Victoria. And that incident forms the impetus for this poem, which is called Attempted Assassination of the Queen. God prosper long our noble queen, and long may she reign. McLean, he tried to shoot her, but it was all in vain. For God, he turned the ball aside. McLean aimed at her head, and he felt very angry because he didn't shoot her dead. There's a divinity that hedges a king, and so it does seem. And my opinion is, it has hedged our most gracious queen. McLean must be a madman, which is obvious to be seen, or else he wouldn't have tried to shoot our most beloved queen. Victoria is a good queen, which all her subjects know, and for that, God has protected her from all her deadly foes. She is noble and generous. Her subjects must confess there hasn't been her equal since the days of good Queen Bess. Long may she be spared to roam among the bonny highland floral and spend many a happy day in the palace of because she is very kind to the old women there and allows them bread, tea, and sugar, and each one get a share. And when they know of her coming, their hearts feel overjoyed, because in general she finds work for men that's unemployed. And she also gives the gypsies money while at Balmoral, I've been told. And mind you, seldom silver, but very often gold. I hope God will protect her by night and by day, at home and abroad when she's far away. May he be as a hedge around her as he's been all along. And let her live and die in peace is the end of my song. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Well, thank you, Dan, but be careful what you ask for. Thank you. I'm happy to invite Ruben Rivera out for the next election.
Okay, well, this poem isn't remotely as funny. This poem was something that was done in community, and it was related around a discussion that actually went for quite a while on the theme of that people around the world pretty much populate heaven with people who are basically themselves. So this poem is titled "Where Others Go When They Die." It starts off with a very brief quotation, and then it goes from there. Where others go when they die. Whoever said that hell is other people got it exactly wrong. At the gate, all universal translators, that monument to the technological advancement of having to know nothing about anyone, will be confiscated. This will be hard. There will be no tribes or nations, only people from every tribe and nation. There will be cultures, but no captivity, differences, but no bigotry, resources, but no rivalry, feasts, but no gluttony. The busiest libraries will contain the histories of the forgotten, the slave, the poor, and disenfranchised, the beaten and left for dead on the side of the road, and the few who helped them. The history books will contain heroes, but they'll be someone else's, and the only meta-narrative will be God's. This will be hard. There will be colors, but no racism, sexes, but no sexism, order, but no classism, languages, but no imperialism. There will be no gerrymandering of scriptures to elevate a flag or nation, for there will be no flags or nations, or scriptures to elevate them. This will be hard. Every treasure will be buried again, and every riddle, including this one, explained. There will be work, but no oppression, goals, but no ambition, gain, but no possession. This will be hard. There will be no system of money and the importance and power based on it. This will be the hardest thing for some, and many will ask for a refund from the religion on their spot. Money will not rule political parties, because there will be no political parties or money to rule them. There will be parties, but no politics, highs, but no addicts. Nothing will ever be eaten again in which one must suffer and die, and another may eat and flourish. Happiness will never again be the result of a zero-sum gain. This will be alien. There will be no right to bear arms for private protection or to repel all enemies, foreign and domestic. For enemies, foreign and domestic, will cease to be, except as outdated terms in the encyclopedia of unreason. Some will experience shock and awe when their weapons are fashioned into symbols of peace. There will be lands but no fences, space but no distance, favor but no preference. Everyone will have access to life-giving water. Things will begin with a great feast that will feature someone else's food, guests that will be someone else's friends, dress will be based on someone else's styles, and conduct will respect someone else's mores. And the only meta-narrative will be God's. Krin McMillen,
I'll be singing Share on the Shining Night by Samuel Barber and text by James Agee. Next we have a reading by Dick Peterson.
The poem by Robert Frost called Choose Something Like a Star, many of you are perhaps familiar with. I've used it in physics classes and so forth to talk about our encounter with nature and our sustenance that comes from it. Yet as I read more about this poem, it's interesting. It's a bit broader than that. It deals with whenever we encounter obscurity and aloofness and eruditeness particularly, and Frost himself said it was written in that mood. So I take it, and I'd like you to hear it in the spirit of, perhaps for professor types, this would be a student talking to you, or a parishioner to a pastor. You get the idea. We are stars sometimes, whether we want to be or not. Choose Something Like a Star by Robert Frost. O star, the fairest one in sight, we grant your loftiness the right to some obscurity of cloud. It will not do to say of night, since dark is what brings out your light. Some mystery becomes the proud. But to be wholly taciturn in your reserve is not allowed. Say something to us we can learn by heart, and when alone repeat. Say something. And it says, I burn. But say with what degree of heat. Talk Fahrenheit, talk centigrade. Use language we can comprehend. Tell us what elements you blend. It gives us strangely little aid, but does tell something in the end. And steadfast as Keats' eremite, not even stooping from its sphere, it asks a little of us here. It asks of us a certain height. So when at times the mob is swayed to carry praise or blame too far, we may choose something like a star to stay our minds on and be stayed. And speaking of stars, Professor Ritchie.
I thought you were going to say, speaking of being stayed.
S-T-A-I-D.
That's what I meant.
This is a poem by Wendell Berry, a great poet from Kentucky, and it's kind of a catechism about the woods and Sabbath. How long does it take to make the woods? As long as it takes to make the world. The woods is present as the world is, the presence of all its past and of all its time to come. It is always finished. It is always being made. The act of its making forever greater than the act of its destruction. It is a part of eternity, for its end and beginning belong to the end and beginning of all things. The beginning lost in the end in the beginning. What is the way to the woods? How do you go there? By climbing up through the 6 days' field, kept in all the body's years, the body's sorrow, weariness, and joy, by passing through the narrow gate on the far side of that field, where the pasture grass of the body's life gives way to the high, original standing of the trees, by coming into the shadow of the grace of the straight ways ending, the shadow of the mercy of light. Why must the gate be narrow? Because you cannot pass beyond it burdened. To come in among these trees, you must leave behind the 6 days' world, all of it, all of its plans and hopes. You must come without weapon or tool, alone, expecting nothing, remembering nothing, into the ease of sight, the brotherhood of eye and leaf. And now Marion Larson will come and read.
One of my favorite contemporary poets is Andrew Hudgens, and several of Hudgens' poems are actually readings of works of visual art. And this particular poem is called Lamentation Over the Dead Christ, which is a reading of two different versions of this scene, both painted by the Italian poet Botticelli. And this is the first version, and in a second I'll switch to the second one because it's important detail in the poem. Dismiss his body, bent so awkwardly across his mother's lap. There's no God in it. Dismiss the saint holding the nails, the thorns. Remember only the Marys, Salome, Cleophas, Magdalene, and Mary, fainting virgin, her body distended, bulging, because she suffers more than anyone can grieve, unless she loosen her human shape and become impossible. And St. John's arm grows long, too long, because he cannot comfort her or ease her body back to what it was before. Impossible, too, are the other Marys, one at either end of Christ. Their hands contort, necks twist strangely, and bodies bend until they're radiant with suffering. And though she's standing back, hiding in plain sight, remember Magdalene. She's hunchbacked, wrenched by dark, misshaping sorrow. The first time, this version, Botticelli gave her eyes. They glittered, ugly with her hatred, rage at those who killed her Savior. A moment, sorry. But in her grief, she called out to the artist, "Take them, erase my eyes." Instead, he's hidden them behind her hands, two hands where there had been a face, until she asked that cup be taken from her. And Botticelli, unlike God, could nod, could say yes, and he does. And next we have Taylor Bothun. Bothun?
Yes,
is that right?
This is The Call by Rayfun Williams with text by George Herbert.
Come my way, my truth, my life, such a way as gives us breath, such a truth as ends our strife, such a life as killeth death. Come my light, my feast, my strength, such a light as shows a feast, such a feast as men's in length, such a strength as makes his best. Come my joy, my love, my heart, such a joy as none can move, such a love as none can part, such a heart as joys in love.
And next we have Rhonda Gilbraith.
This last poem is by Minnesota's poet laureate, Joyce Sutphin. It's called The Farm. My father's farm is an apple blossomer. He keeps his hills in dandelion carpet and weaves a lane of lilacs between the rows and the jack in the pulpits. His sleek cows ripple in the pastures. The dog and purple iris keep watch at the garden's end. His farm is rolling thunder, a lightning bolt on the horizon. His crops suck rain from the sky and swallow the smoldering sun. His fields are oceans of heat, where waves of gold beat the burning shore. A red fox pauses under the birch trees. A shadow is in the river's bend. When the hawk circles the land, my father's grain fields whirl beneath it. Owls gather together to sing in his woods, and the deer run his golden meadow. My father's farm is an icicle, a hillside of white powder. He parts the snowy sea and smooths away the valleys. He cultivates his rows of starlight and drags the crescent moon through dark, unfurrowed fields. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to those of you who read and sang, and happy Easter to you all.